Greetings, Seekers. This is Black Hope Vice, and I have a special announcement. I have a script, but not only do I have a script to make things more entertaining and stuff, I'm combining the first video with a later video, but also splitting up that video to kind of make the lecture series more informative and more structured in a way. So this video is titled Why Magic and Modernity and the Importance of Guru. Now, I am also going to include in this video, since I've been a little lax on doing weekly updates. There's been a fire lately, and then I've been caught up with work and drama and all these stuff. But soon I think I'm going to have a lot more time to do weekly updates, and you'll see why when that video comes around. But I'm going to talk about other stuff that is more for more seasoned viewers, but it will serve as a reference point for the newcomers about how deep this magic rabbit hole goes. And like, you know, is the guy who's dressed up as a skeleton wizard, is this guy for real? Well, let's find out in this lecture titled Why Magic and Modernity and the Importance of Guru. I ask you, what has convinced you about, like, your secular beliefs? What has made you think, oh, magic, oh, religion, oh, Christ? What has made you do that? What scientific study that's been peer-reviewed has demonstrated to you beyond a doubt that magic and religion are a waste of one's time? Was it a teacher or another figure of authority in your life, whether it be personal or celebrity, that has convinced you to have that position? Was it a textbook that said spontaneous generation isn't real, and they cited a story about how rotting meat doesn't produce maggots and later flies? Or about how fairies aren't real, because they cite a story about how some young girls faked photos of fairies once? Was it how James Randi's challenge was never completed? Or was it something a little more profound? Like, was it because the right questions were never presented to you? Such as, if Christ is completely false, how does a historian explain the past 2,000 years? I don't know, but I'm not a historian, so not my problem. This and more, likely a lot more. I feel sorry for you, but things are going to change if you keep watching my free videos. This and more has been done to your mind and body and soul. But this is part of, you know, how it is to be under a totalitarian capitalist regime. And, like, we got here because the Enlightenment was basically a reactionary temper tantrum to the Catholic Church being decadent and corrupt. I will talk about in later videos about conspiracy theories and such. I have some older videos called Who We Are, Where We Are, What We Are, Where We Are. Can't remember off the top of my head. But about that kind of subject. But I'm going to make it in one video because it just needs to be compartmentalized, especially if I'm going to use a script. I don't need to kind of take the time with, you know, kind of recollecting my thoughts when I have everything presented in front of me. But that's for later's video, about how I will discuss how the occupiers of Christ's Matrix are fooling us. I think that's going to be not necessarily the next video. I think I might make something on runes really quickly. Just more practical stuff before I talk about theory again. But in the lecture series, it's going to be the second video, so expect it really soon. But back to The basic lies about fairies, spontaneous generation, and James Randi. Now, let me get back to that. It's funny, like, they really think that, like, people 500 years ago, or 700 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, really didn't know where maggots came from. Or, like, flies, or, like... They just didn't understand the process of entropy. Like, they didn't understand, like, how things broke down. Like, they just couldn't figure it out. They just couldn't establish a parallel. They were capable of figuring all these other things out. How to survive without technology. But they couldn't figure out, like, where fucking maggots came from. Sorry I swore, but... this is the stuff they want to push on kids. It's disgusting. You should be disgusted. Spontaneous generation is a thing, but not in the way you think. It is merely a term, a god of the gaps, to describe functioning energy processes, which most of which we can't see happen in real time. Like, we don't see the mechanics of energy processes happening. We just see kind of the end result. And basically what I'm saying is, I have a hypothesis that there are things that happen, the energetic processes that produce there's energetic processes that have, you can tell I'm ad-libbing a little bit right now when I'm looking at my text, that there are energetic processes that go through mechanical motions that produce matter. And the matter is an expression of the entropic processes have been going on for some time. And, I don't want to go, and it's not necessarily entropic. It could be energetic processes. Like, crystals don't suffer from entropy when they grow because of energy exchange. They're changing. But, like, I've cleaned enough toilets that on a day-to-day basis, like the same toilet too, that I just sometimes think to myself, how did this, feces mechanically get from point of action to over here without either A, there's an energetic process that I described already where, entropy creates matter, or rather that energetic processes can produce or express themselves through waste or matter. Or like, I don't know, like the toilet or the fridge that I'm citing as big evidences are possessed or something, and they're still producing their shit, but then it's not still like this great scheme of things, like, oh, this is how the universe works, rather like, oh, this fucking toilet is haunted and is fucking producing shit, which, there is a feces demon. So, I mean, that's Catholic canon, so... So, I'm not just pulling this out my butt. And on the fairy subject now. Oh boy. If you're new in this subject, you're gonna hear a lot. That might be a little overwhelming, but you may have to rewatch it to catch all of it. If you take my lectures very seriously, you should. I mean, I look so nice. I mean, why wouldn't you take me as someone who takes himself seriously? Am I not a convincing enough skeleton wizard? Aspiring skeleton wizard? On the subject of fairies, one can experiment with this yourself if you take my lectures seriously and you follow what I talk about. Fae, forest folk, and other wights. Wights is a German word for embodied being, and not a type of undead. which is a D&D thing, and me saying whites might make sense to someone who's like, oh, he's a necromancer. Ooh, when I say whites, you might be thinking literal mid-tier undead soldiers. I wish I had those. Yes. But no, I'm talking about embodied beings. One of the terms for Odin is King of Whites. So just to give an idea of like white doesn't specifically refer to like the beings in the forest, but that's the common way people who are into cryptozoology, what they're talking about when they say whites. They don't want to just say familiars, and they don't want to say something like Pokemon. Though, I mean, what do you think they're talking about when they talk about Pokemon, other than Shintoism? I have published an article about cryptozoology, and I mean, if you found this video, you probably can easily find. Sorry, someone just came in. That's okay. Just spooked me. I got spooked. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so if you found this video, you probably have an idea where to find this article I have on cryptozoology, and I talk about how to find these whites, these energy beings. I will go into detail about how they function in a later video, but in short, they have these spaces I call habitation circles, and they're roughly circular spaces that seem more manicured to the space exterior to this circle. Forest fires, like the one that recently happened in my area, help make these spaces more noticeable. Soon I'll be resuming broadcasts of my normal romping grounds, plus the new areas, because it will be fun to explore, and you guys get to see that stuff. And as I begin these processes, I'm going to begin to develop communication link for any aspiring cryptozoologist to have access to my friend. He can be your friend too. His name is Baozi2, or Hakutaku, and he is it's a cryptozoological entity from Chinese and Japanese mythology, and he knows all the other cryptozoological entities and whites and stuff. There's like over 10,000. There's over 11,000 of them. I think it's 11,500 specifically. And I can't be the only one who's looking into this stuff. You guys have to help me too. I mean, this free lecture stuff, I need to get you guys involved too. I can't just be the only one who's going out in the forest, doing this stuff. I'll tell you the tools and techniques to keep you safe, but, I can't be the only one who completes the Pokedex. And, on kind of the subject of how related to keeping updates, one of the things I'm in the process of doing is I'm having some results in imbuing energies from necromantically militant melee wands as a part of a process to create black magic waste, as in death magic, entropic magic, that I can transmute into energies that will help create a stabilizing phylactery for intelligences to tether themselves to a physical object. in this experiment, I have 2 leftover tree stumps that will be carved into and modified with rune stabs and enchanted crystals, which I have named runestones, to create transmuting and empowering energies for the black/undead themed familiars of mine. I'm still not quite sure how the typing and elemental bases, but the Shintoist propaganda manual seems to be a great jumping off point, though I believe vampiric and celestial typings need to be added. I'm hoping that empowering these aristocratic ladies will result in much beautification. Now, a quick back jump to how James Randi is a murderer. How do I know James Randi is a murderer? The United States government has been dabbling in psychic research for decades. You can find Russell Targ's videos on YouTube Talk about what he did for decades. He even has a free app called ESP Trainer available for download. When I found out the James Randi challenge had stopped when I was plotting over the phone against about levitating up to the air and then dropping down to the ground, I was like, oh wow. At the time, it was quite the synchronicity. I was like, something's not right. But now the more I think about it, the more that I know that they know, and people have suffered, innocent people have suffered, because people just didn't tell the truth. And that's not cool. Now, I can go on about the lies of our society, but that's in another video. But I feel like I've done enough to hook you into the argument about why magic and modernity. Well, it's real, and you should do it. It has practical uses. Maybe you don't get to this level, but maybe you should learn how to use the tools. I mean, oh look, what is this? Oh, what is this one? Oh, maybe this is to heal DNA. One of the 3 runestone techniques to heal DNA. Oh, what is this? This helps you. These 2 can help you clear your mind in different ways to meditate. Ooh, how helpful. Oh, this one helps regenerate brain tissue. Oh, well, how insightful. And not just any kind of brain tissue, a specific kind for sight. What is this? Oh, this is a time manipulator. Oh, but this one is easier to see. That's Nodhouse, Fehu, Pertho on red jasper. Octarine, Nodhouse, blue, Fehu, orange, Pertho. I have the color correspondences to a Pete Carroll essay. Ritual and Spell Design in 8 Magics is, I believe, the name of the essay on the top of my head. But basically the premise is that this is need magic. Like if you need help, you need to get through certain stressing periods, this will help, because runic magic is not limited by time, linear time. It's not constrained by linear time. And I don't know how to put it any other way than saying rune magic can manifest results before you even perform a ritual. And you can make this yourself, you can buy it yourself, but you're not going to be able to understand like what you have the ability to have at your hands, including like protection from energy parasites and stuff, without like knowing this stuff's real. You know? So, I hooked you in, and, back to the importance of guru. I'm trying to convince you this is authentic. I'm trying to convince you this isn't a waste of your time. And I think I'm gonna close up a lot of this really quickly because I feel like I've been quite convincing. What is guru? The importance of guru. Technically speaking, it is someone who knows that they, as an individual, are it, much like how you are it, and so is everyone else. It is someone who knows that they are it, and it being God of the universe. Now, I feel like there's a lot of people who know this more or less. I feel like I know this more or less. But I'm not trying to use it in the sense that I'm trying to convey faith about that. I'm trying to convey faith about a lower identity, though higher than your normal, mundane human self. You know, an attempt for you, your current ego, to grasp at the immortal, the eternal, the ever-continuous flow of time. To actively interact with the simulation rather than being what's the word I want to say? I guess the best, dominated by the simulation, the subtle domination. Some people don't even know they're being dominated. That's how dominated they are. I'm a lecturing warlock. That's my kind of importance of guru. I'm trying to demonstrate faith in that kind of concept rather than something more priestly, shamanic. I'm just trying to be like, hey, there's all these different kinds of career paths available. That's basically my argument, rather than saying, in these career paths, people find meaning in these things, and then they service people because people have unique needs. And I mentioned warlock. But what does that mean? I have a specific way of magical operations that I have a natural affinity for. I work with enchantments and entities. Sure, I know spells, but I'm not like a mage who studies and can learn basically anything. I do have the ability to easily appropriate, but that's just not my modus operandum. I don't constantly seek out things. I find something that interests me and then immediately claim it, and then that's it, and I don't have to search for anything anymore until I need a new solution. Nor am like a shaman, in the truest classical sense of a shaman, which is a very specific thing, and a very powerful thing. In many ways, a true shaman is such a powerful jack of all trades, that, like, the problem is that being a shaman is really, 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 really hard to be a shaman, especially to have the powers of a shaman. It's very traumatizing. Or am I a healer in the sense that, like, laying on the hands, or someone who purely focuses on healing is really good at it. I am interested in healing techniques and stuff, but that's more like something I have to apply really for, rather than something that's like, oh yeah, enchantments, working with entities, snap. And there's tons of other synonyms from Magic users that are common in video games and other sorts of mediums. as to do necromancy, and by this, I don't mean any sort of classical sense of what necromancy is. What I specifically do is I believe there's a lot of karma I have from past lives as necromancers, evil aspiring warlordism. And because of that, I feel like that has caused me, as a false prophet in that life, to have entangled other people's lives and destinies and things like that into my own. And now, when I have a chance for redemption, for me to try to demonstrate, like, I'm sorry I was deceived by illusion and ego and greed and sin and things like that. How can I demonstrate that if I don't try to make amends towards those who I've led astray? And I guess that's where a lot of my working with entities comes into play. A lot of, I guess, I would say the undead things I work with, the ghostly things I work with, relate to that. And I guess it's a little bit of a trick to figure out, how do I properly facilitate such beings into a higher state of consciousness that is proper, considering they have been, they're not in the best of states, let's say that. Not the worst, but not the best. Not something I would kind of want for myself, really. Like, I'd rather be a cat than, I don't know, something like a kami. Kami. It basically means ambiguous spirit in Shintoism. Someone might disagree with me about the terming, but that's the best way I can convey it quickly. And who we are, what we are, I'm going to talk more about that kind of self-realization, about kind of like types of magic users, because I'll give examples of that. The last kind of magical identity I'm really into, and it's very interesting, because it's going to seem like, oh yeah, this guy, he says he's in the Christ, he says he's dressed up as a wizard, he says he's trad. What is he really talking about? One of the ways I can kind of help demonstrate this authenticity with Guru is, I'm an Odane. And Odane is, you have to understand, the myths of Odin are really, according to some, and I believe this from my experience, that the mythology of Odin are elaborate rituals that impersonators fulfill to become like Odin and gain powers of Odin. It is a left-hand path approach, meaning that there is really no centralized authority. In many ways, it's like shamanism, in the sense that there's no hierarchy other than, like, people can recognize power levels and differences in power levels. And in the Lord of the Rings Hobbit series, there's a character called Gandalf. And canonically speaking, like, this is canon. Like, I'm not, again, once again, I'm not, maybe that was another video. Anyway, this is canon. Anyway, I'm not pulling this out of nowhere. I first read about it long before I ever got into realizing I was an Odin. I remember reading Gandalf is inspired by the character Odin. Well, what kind of wizard is Gandalf? Well, what does Gandalf really seem like, other than an impersonator of Odin who undergoes kind of reincarnation, transformation into a more Christ-like figure. I had a big debate with Varg about this, and not to say that I don't think he was... How do I want to put this? Have you ever seen someone who was talking about the right thing, but they weren't really? Like, they were using the right ideas, but they phrased it the wrong way, and just like... It sounds like they understand it, but do they really understand it? Varg Vikernes is a pagan, and I have what he said, the kind of embarrassing thing he said that really demonstrates. I think he is quite knowledgeable, but, you know, there's limitations on how much he is with it. I think musicians are kind of woke, but then when they leave the music, the wokeness doesn't transfer to the rest of their expression. I'm just talking about the being ordained. Kind of demonstrate that, you know, there's a lot of things you might not really necessarily think might be your life path. You might, because of your bloodline, might be born onto a path that you're not even aware of, but it's there. I mean, the case with some Odains. Some people might have found it earlier in their lives, you know, they somehow stumbled across the runes. That's a signal. That's a signal. That's a token. That's a, you know, before you kind of begin to the self-realization process, you can look back into your memories and be like, where can I find tokens in my life's journey before I start really examining my consciousness and my history leading me up to this moment? Where can I find tokens that support these ideas that I have now about myself and where I'm going and what I am? And, I mean, for me as a necromancer, I have a lot of that. Though, when I first got into magic, the runes were the first real thing that called out to me, because I was like, I saw a folder that said K.H. Wells, and I was like, this one really just popped out at me. And he had some really... K.H. Wells, you can't find any of his books online anymore. But he has some really grand theory about runes. That is better than, I guess, the classical Elder Foucault views on runes, as far as I know, because I've read one guy's opinion on it, and it's just like, he'd rather talk about it functionally in the traditions rather than like, here's why I think it works outside of what he says the tradition is. I think there's just... K.H. Wells, I think, is a good spot on. I'm just ignoring some of this because I just feel it's just like too much. Back to this. No, here we go. Back to the conclusion. You know, essentially all the points of all my lectures, besides this one, is to demonstrate to you the profound reality around you and have faith in what you're doing. Because if you don't have faith in your magic, you're not going to be able to do anything. So I need to be so with it that like it instills confidence in you. And some of you might be very pious Christians, being like still with me at this point. But I think I hooked you in earlier with some stuff. Are concerned. But let me ask you this. How do you think magic is different than how Catholics pray to angels and saints? What does the technology of angels look like? I'm gonna guess it is wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, the classical tools of fire, water, air, and earth. Yeah, wands, cups, swords, and pentacles, or discs. If we are the sons of Adam, are we not gardeners of reality? What does that mean? I'm very curious about how much over time it will be to rematerialize the whites into something ecologically tangible that our ancestors understood and saw and said was a reality. Is this a good thing? This is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing if we are aware and we continue to support the reincarnation ecosystem that we need. But yes, I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm a serious researcher. I'm interested in this kind of annexing theological artwork. I'm a job creator. Casino capitalism should be researching my work, but they don't, so I'm here to tell you guys about why it's not the end of history. The only end of history that's coming is that the worship of Christ and the appreciation of the gods and Gaiden and all of the other, beings of the earth is going to return. We're going to stop caring for this materialism, this enlightenment nonsense blip in history. Ancient Egypt was 3,000 years. Who knows how old Hindu civilization existed? Because there's underwater temples and stuff. How old are the Buddhists? Because when you think about Gautama, there was already Buddhists there. Just Gautama is the more Buddhist Buddha. The society that worships science and doesn't appreciate there are people who are healers or like me, who have legitimate roles in society, in this community of beings. Doesn't have a role, it's going to end. It's going to end soon. It's Revelations. Revelations meaning revealing information. So, I think this is it. I think I've presented a case where there's no reason, from my opinion, you should do your research and you should look into what I've talked about and things like that. Just look into some of the things I talked about, get your opinion on things. Or, you can just have faith that, I'm talking about something tangible, and that it's interesting. Life really could be an adventure. And it's not the end of history, in the sense that it's just inevitable. America's going to rise, and we're going to go to space, and we're going to meet aliens, and there's no God, and you should, live in your apartment and eat sorbet with the other 14.99 billion humans in air-conditioned apartments. No, it's different. Something else is going to happen. And it's a mystery. Have a good night. Namaste.